Okay, so I want you to picture a very specific moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a moment I think every single person listening has felt.
Mm-hmm.
You're standing on the edge of a decision. Maybe you're in a conference room, and you have this incredible idea that could solve the problem everyone is arguing about.
Right.
Or maybe you're at home, sitting in front of a laptop, staring at a blinking cursor, finally ready to start that side hustle or write that book you've been talking about for years.
You know you can do it. The talent isn't the issue.
Exactly. You have the skills.
Yeah.
But then there's this glitch.
The freeze response, the system error in the brain.
Yes, it's like a physical freeze.
Yeah.
You hesitate, you overthink, you play out 10 different scenarios in your head.
And then the moment passes.
It passes. You stay silent in the meeting, or you close the laptop and decide to watch TV instead. And later, you tell yourself you were just, thinking it through or being careful.
But it wasn't caution.
No. If we're being honest, and the goal of this deep dive is to be brutally honest, it was fear. Specifically, the paralyzing fear that you might mess it up.
It is a universal experience. I don't care how successful someone is, they have felt this. But what's fascinating about this specific fear, the fear of making mistakes, is that it is one of the most expensive psychological habits we have.
But it's how?
We pay for it in missed promotions, unfinished projects, unlearned languages, and just a general lack of growth. It is a tax we pay on our own potential.
Yeah, it's such a good way to put it.
Yeah.
A tax on potential. And that is exactly why we're digging into this today. We've combed through a massive stack of research articles and psychological analysis on this exact topic, the fear of making mistakes, why failure holds us back, and how to move forward.
And our mission really is to figure out why our brains treat a simple error like it's a life or death situation.
And more importantly, how to trick our brains into letting us move forward anyway.
And I am glad we're doing this one because the literature on this is fascinating. It turns out this isn't just a personality quirk. You're not just a nervous person.
It's a mechanism.
It's a mechanism. And like any mechanism, once you understand how the gears work, you can usually dismantle it or at least learn how to operate it without it shutting you down.
That is the goal. I want to start with something that really jumped out at me from the source material right away.
Okay.
I think I've spent most of my life assuming that fearing mistakes is just, well, human nature.
Right.
Like we're wired to avoid pain, and being wrong is painful, so obviously we avoid it.
But the research suggests that's not entirely true, is it? We aren't born worrying about looking stupid.
No, absolutely not.
Think about a toddler learning to walk. It is the classic example for a reason. They stand up, they wobble, they take one step, and they fall flat on their face.
Right.
Does the toddler sit there on the floor and think, well, that was humiliating. Everyone is looking at me. I guess walking just isn't my thing. I'm such a failure.
Right? No. They just look around, maybe laugh, and get back up. They don't have a crisis of confidence.
Exactly. They don't look around to see if the other babies are judging their form. The fear of error is not innate. It is learned.
And the sources. They kind of point a very accusatory finger at our educational systems for this.
They do. We are conditioned, usually starting around age 5 or 6, to view mistakes in a very specific negative way.
This is the red pen theory the articles mentioned.
It is. Think about the mechanics of school. You take a test, you get 90% of the answers right. That is a great score.
But when you get the paper back, where does your eye go?
Straight to the red marks. The errors are highlighted, they are penalized, and often they are corrected publicly. If you raise your hand and give the wrong answer, the class might laugh or the teacher might correct you in a way that feels, dismissive.
It creates a Pavlovian response. Mistake equals pain. Mistake equals shame.
Precisely. We spend 12 to 16 years in a system where the primary objective is don't get it wrong. We are trained to believe that the goal of life is the A.
And the A represents the absence of error.
So we start associating mistakes not with learning, which is what they actually are, biologically speaking, but with shame, disappointment, and a loss of status.
It's almost like we're confusing competence with perfection. The material talks about how mistakes threaten our self-image. I think that hits home for a lot of people.
It does.
We like to think of ourselves as smart, capable, prepared people. If I make a mistake, does that mean I'm not those things?
That is the internal struggle. It challenges the ego. But the sources dig deeper than just internal ego. They argue that the fear is usually rooted in judgment. It's social.
So we aren't just afraid of the mistake itself.
We're afraid of the audience.
Even if the audience is imaginary. because half the time, nobody's even paying attention.
Especially if the audience is imaginary, we have this spotlight effect where we think everyone is watching us much more closely than they actually are. We imagine being laughed at, rejected, or misunderstood. And the text makes a really sharp point here. We often become our own worst audience. We replay the tape.
Oh, the 3:30 a.m. replay. I know it well. You say something slightly awkward in a meeting, and nobody else cares. They've probably forgotten it by lunch.
But you're still agonizing over it 3 days later. That is the conditioning at work. You're reinforcing the danger of the mistake, even when there was no actual consequence.
You're teaching your brain, see? That was dangerous.
And this leads us directly to the biggest, shiniest shield people use to protect themselves from this fear. We have to talk about perfectionism.
Yes, let's unpack perfectionism, because I feel like in the corporate world, or even in creative fields, perfectionism is treated like this noble burden. You know, the classic job interview answer. My biggest weakness is that I care too much. I'm a perfectionist. We wear it like a badge of honor.
But the articles we read for this deep dive, they really tear that idea apart. They flip the narrative completely. The common belief is that perfectionism is about high standards. It is about excellence. We think, I just want this to be the best it can be.
But that's not it.
The psychological consensus in our sources is that perfectionism has very little to do with excellence. It is primarily about fear.
So it's not an offensive strategy for greatness. It's a defensive strategy.
It is a 20-ton shield. The thought process isn't, I want to be great. The thought process is, if I do this perfectly, I can avoid judgment. I can avoid shame. No one can hurt me if I don't leave any cracks.
It's a way to try and control perception.
Exactly.
That is a heavy way to live.
Yeah.
But surely wanting to do things well isn't bad. Where is the line between striving for excellence and perfectionism?
It comes down to the focus. Striving for excellence is process-focused. How can I improve this? How can I make this better?
Okay.
Perfectionism is outcome-focused. What will they think of this? Will this be unimpeachable? And because perfectionism is driven by fear, it leads to some very ironic behaviors.
Ironic how?
The source calls this paralysis analysis.
I love that term, even though I'm definitely guilty of it. Break that down for us. What does paralysis analysis look like in the wild?
It looks like productive procrastination. It is the writer who spends 6 months researching the history of fountain pens instead of writing the novel, telling themselves they need just a bit more context.
Or the entrepreneur who won't launch the website because the shade of blue on the logo isn't quite right yet.
Yes. It is waiting for perfect conditions.
Which, let's be honest, never actually happened.
Exactly. It's the illusion of getting it right the first time. We convince ourselves that if we just prepare enough, read enough, and think enough, we can bypass the messy learning stage and jump straight to being an expert.
We think we can skip the suck phase.
Which is impossible. You can't skip the suck.
And I think social media makes this worse, doesn't it? The source touched on the highlight reel effect, and I think that plays a huge role in why we feel this way.
Absolutely. This is a critical piece of the puzzle. We are constantly consuming everyone else's finished products.
The polished TED Talk, the successful product launch.
The perfectly edited vacation video. We do not see the 20 failed drafts that speaker wrote. We don't see the near bankruptcy the entrepreneur faced.
We don't see the argument the couple had right before the photo was taken.
Exactly. So we compare our messy, awkward behind-the-scenes footage to everyone else's polished movie trailer.
And the conclusion we draw is, something is wrong with me. Everyone else has this figured out except me.
Everyone else is succeeding effortlessly. But the reality, as the text emphasizes, is that every expert was once a disaster. Every successful project went through a phase where it was broken.
So mistakes aren't the opposite of success.
They are the raw materials of success.
Mistakes are the raw materials of success.
That is a great line. It implies that if you aren't making mistakes, you aren't actually building anything.
You're just organizing your tools. You are opting for stagnation. The source puts it very starkly. When we avoid mistakes, we avoid growth.
Growth is impossible without error. Biologically and psychologically, yes. Error is the feedback mechanism. It tells your brain, okay, that didn't work, adjust left. If you never throw the ball, you never learn how to aim.
You cannot learn just by thinking about throwing the ball.
No.
This brings up a really crucial point about identity. There is a section in the notes that I found pretty heavy, honestly. It talks about the language we use when we fail.
A grammatical shift, but it changes everything.
What is it?
It's the shift from behavior to identity. It is the difference between saying, I made a mistake.
And I am a mistake.
That's the one.
That hits hard. I am a mistake.
It sounds dramatic when you say it out loud, but I think a lot of us feel that way internally when we screw up.
We do.
It stops being about the spreadsheet or the burnt dinner and starts being about our worth as a human being.
Exactly. It turns a temporary event into a permanent verdict.
Mm.
If you believe you are the mistake, then you can't fix it because you can't fix who you are.
This is incredibly common in high-pressure environments, law, medicine, tech, academia, where people conflate their performance with their value.
If I am not competent, I am nothing.
That's the mindset and the toll of that. I mean, living like that must be exhausting. You're constantly defending your right to exist based on your last success.
It leads to burnout.
It requires constant, hypervigilant self-monitoring. You are always looking over your shoulder. And the irony, there's that word again, is that this anxiety actually makes you more likely to make mistakes.
Why?
Because your cognitive resources are tied up in worrying rather than doing the task. You are so busy trying not to crash that you forget to drive.
So we have established that this fear is learned, it masquerades as perfectionism, and it hurts our performance and our mental health.
Right.
Now, let's pivot to the how. How do we dismantle this? The source talks about reframing, which sounds like a buzzword, but how does it actually work?
Reframing is cognitive restructuring. It's not just positive thinking. Right now, your brain sees a mistake as a stop sign. It signals danger.
And we need to reframe it
As data. We need to adopt the mindset of a scientist.
treat it like a lab experiment.
Exactly. Think about a scientist in a lab trying to develop a cure or a new material. If they run an experiment and it doesn't get the result they wanted, do they go home and cry?
No.
Do they say, I'm a terrible scientist? No. They say, interesting, that combination didn't work. Let's record that and try a different combination.
It neutralizes the emotion. It becomes just physics. I tried X, Y happened, I wanted Z, so I need to change X. It's not personal.
Precisely. The source suggests asking specific, neutral questions immediately after a mistake. Instead of, why am I so stupid? You ask, what was the variable that caused this?
Was it timing? Was it lack of information?
Did I miss a step? What can I do differently next time? You turn the judgment into curiosity.
Curiosity does seem like the antidote to fear. But to get to that place where you can be objective, you need something else the source mentions. And this is a term that I think gets a bad rap.
Self-compassion.
Yes.
It does get a bad rap, especially in driven, ambitious circles. People hear self-compassion and they think of participation trophies. They think it means letting yourself off the hook or having low standards.
Right, that's the fear. That if I'm too nice to myself, I'll become lazy. I need that inner critic to whip me into shape.
But the research shows the exact opposite. That approach, the whipping, creates anxiety, which lowers performance.
And the whatever's fine approach.
That's apathy, not compassion. Self-compassion simply means responding to your own errors with the same understanding you would offer a friend.
Okay.
If your best friend came to you and said, I really messed up that presentation, I feel awful, you wouldn't scream at them. You wouldn't say, you're an idiot, you should quit your job.
Hopefully not. I'd say, hey, it happens. That was a tough room. What are you going to do to fix it?
Exactly. You would be supportive but forward-looking. When we treat ourselves with that same support, the research indicates we actually become more resilient.
Why is that?
We're willing to take bigger risks. Because we know that if we fall, the internal voice isn't going to kick us while we are down. We create a safety net for ourselves.
That makes sense. If I know I'm not going to verbally abuse myself for failing, I'm less afraid to try.
This concept extends to our environments too. This is psychological safety. In workplaces where mistakes are punished, people go silent. They hide errors.
Which can be disastrous.
But in teams where mistakes are treated as learning opportunities, you see higher innovation, higher creativity, and actually fewer catastrophic errors because people catch them early.
Okay, so we need to be nicer to ourselves and create better environments.
Yeah.
But I want to get to the brass tacks of taking action.
Right.
Because even if I understand all this intellectually, standing on that edge I mentioned at the start, I'm still waiting to feel confident before I jump. And the source has a pretty harsh truth about that, doesn't it?
It busts the myth of confidence. This is perhaps the most important takeaway for anyone listening who feels stuck.
What's the myth?
We think the order of operations is: Step 1, feel confident. Step 2, take action.
That seems logical. I need to feel like I can do it before I do it.
But psychology tells us the order is actually reversed. Action comes first. Confidence is just the memory of survival.
The memory of survival.
You build confidence by doing the thing you are afraid of and realizing you didn't die. You cannot think your way into confidence.
You can't think your way into confidence. You have to act your way into it.
Correct. If you wait until you feel 100% ready and confident, you will wait forever. The feeling of readiness is a luxury that rarely arrives.
You have to move while you still feel unready.
You do.
So what is the strategy then? If I am terrified, but I know I need to act to get confident, how do I start without having a panic attack?
The source recommends small acts of courage. Don't try to conquer your biggest fear tomorrow. If you're afraid of public speaking, don't book a keynote for 1,000 people.
Lower the stakes.
Lower the stakes. The goal is to desensitize yourself to the feeling of imperfection.
Give me an example. What is a small act I can do today?
Send an email with a typo in it on purpose.
Oh, that gives me anxiety just hearing it. My finger is hovering over the backspace key mentally.
I know, and that is exactly why you should do it. It proves to your brain that the world doesn't end.
Okay, what else?
Or speak up in a meeting within the first 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be brilliant. Just ask a clarifying question or agree with someone. Just break the seal of silence.
Submit a draft that is 80% done rather than 110% done.
Yes. You need to prove to your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, that the world does not end when things aren't perfect.
You are essentially exposure therapying yourself. You are building up a tolerance to the discomfort of being imperfect.
You are. And this leads to a beautiful reframing of what courage actually is. We tend to think courage means being fearless. We say, I want to be fearless.
Right, that is the superhero ideal. No fear at all.
But the source says, courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement in its presence.
Say that again.
Courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement in its presence. If you aren't afraid, you don't need courage. You just need common sense. Courage is only possible when you are scared.
That is incredibly freeing. It means I don't have to fix my fear before I can do my work.
You can bring the fear with me. It can sit in the passenger seat.
But it doesn't get to drive.
It does not get to drive. You can be terrified and moving forward at the exact same time. That is the definition of bravery.
And the more you do it, the quieter the fear gets.
It never goes away completely, but it stops screaming.
I think that is a perfect place to start wrapping this up. We have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have. It's a dense topic.
Let's recap the big beats. First, we realized that the fear of making mistakes isn't a factory setting. It is conditioning. It is a habit we learned, which means we can unlearn it.
Second, we exposed perfectionism for what it really is. Not a badge of honor, but a shield rooted in fear. It causes paralysis in disguise.
Right. We also talked about that dangerous shift from I made a mistake to I am a mistake, and how treating errors as objective data can stop that spiral.
We are looking for information, not validation.
And finally, the actionable truth. You will never feel ready. Confidence is the result of action, not the prerequisite.
You have to be willing to be a beginner, to look a little foolish, and to struggle through the messy middle to get to the expertise on the other side.
It really creates a fork in the road for you, doesn't it? You have two choices. You can choose comfort, you can stay safe and stay exactly where you are.
Or you can choose growth. But the price of admission for growth is the willingness to make mistakes. You cannot have both.
And when you look at the people you admire,
You're not looking at people who never failed. You are looking at the people who failed the most, but who refused to let those failures define them. They just got back up faster.
speed of learning over perfection of execution.
Every single time.
Well, that is the deep dive for today. But before we let you go, we want to leave you with one final thought from the source material. It is a bit of a challenge to carry with you this week.
The source ends with this sentiment. The greatest mistake is not failing. It is never trying at all. So the question we leave you with is this. Are you waiting for the fear to disappear, or are you ready to start moving with it?
Something to chew on the next time you are hesitating to hit send. Thanks for diving in with us today. Go out there and make some glorious mistakes.
See you next time.